welcome back to One Winning Pod, where the Ravens lost a preseason game, but I guess it doesn't hurt as much because the streak is kind of dead. But I'm hearing myself through the thing.
What?
Oh, that makes sense because I had the link open. Nice. Well done. Good podcasting.
Way to go. You can't have YouTube open while you're recording.
Preseason for everyone.
I said when I did it out. I was like, why am I hearing myself? This is so strange. Okay. But anyways, like I said, it doesn't bad because the streaks are, that's how I feel. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just another preseason game. I don't know. It's definitely different. Just like the last couple of years, like we knew, like roster is definitely ascending. It was really deep. And, with losing all the free agents that we did last year, there was definitely a lot of gaps that had to be filled on the roster. And, I feel like you can kind of see that, at least in some position groups. Some position groups are still pretty strong. But, other ones, they're... not as inspiring maybe as years past, but it's all good. The Eagles have a good roster too. I thought their offense that they played, particularly in the first half, I think was pretty good. They're pushing our defense around a little bit, but yeah, give them credit though. It was a tight game, 16-13.
It's tougher these days, right? I mean, for the most part, and the Ravens are certainly among these teams, and probably I think if you look back on it, we're one of the forefronts of doing this. I mean, you're seeing very few of the starters play, right? That was always part of preseason that was exciting because it would be the first time you saw the star players back in action, even though they wouldn't be playing much, even though it wouldn't be, terribly meaningful. That was always something you look forward to, which isn't to say that, watching these guys who are fringe roster guys see who might break through isn't exciting. Because, I mean, it obviously is. We wouldn't be doing this podcast if we didn't think that, right? But yeah, I think there's just something lost from the excitement with that being the way that preseason's going. It's the smart move, right? Because we don't want to see anyone who we're counting on in the season go down for injury. But yeah, I mean, the best thing I can say about the game, I think, was a great time to see the young offensive line, some of these young guys in the secondary, and see how they'll perform. I enjoyed taking my son to his first Ravens game. He said he had a good time at it. That was fun. We left at halftime, and like I said, with how the game is these days, I don't think we missed too much live to say. But which isn't to say the second half there wasn't a lot to watch. But when it's not the games that matter, you don't need to see every snap live.
And luckily, we have the TV copy, which was definitely useful
yeah.
when looking at offensive line play, which I do think was the number one thing on everyone's radar, including our own. So I guess, again, I'll dish it over to you, Chris. What were your thoughts about the offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we kind of talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I think, in that, there are obviously a lot of spots open. And I think we talked about this in Discord recently with a couple other people, but, particularly on right guard, right tackle, having two vets in there in Moses and, oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. Zeitler. I'm sorry. Zeitler and Moses. Those guys being vets who had, been with the Ravens for a while and also, been in the league a while. When you have both of them depart, one to free agency, one to a trade, it's a big deal. It's the whole right side of the line, not to mention also losing your left guard, and then, Stanley being a little bit up and down in terms of his injuries. So a lot of question marks. And then coming into it, Linderbaum now is hurt. So yeah, a lot of familiar names, but not a whole lot of names that we can rely on in and out, week in, week out. Overall, I think it was okay. In terms of specifics, I mean, I was watching Voorhees a good bit of left guard. I feel like he had some good snaps. He was moving some guys off the ball. In other cases, he was getting beat a little bit, but for a guy who didn't really play his rookie year, I think it was okay. I'm not sure if he's going to, light the league on fire when he starts, but I think he might be okay in that spot. The biggest question mark for me really is what we're doing with Cleveland and Falele. Cleveland obviously started a couple games at right guard last year, but now he's backup center, so he got the start. at center for pretty much the whole game, until maybe the second half, late in the second half. And Falele was a right guard, which I know that they were talking about in training camp. And, for me, like, I'm just really not sure who has what spots. I feel like you have some differing opinions on Cleveland than I do, Alec. For me, I'm not super confident about, I guess, his roster spot in general. I feel like they're trying to figure out, does he have any other positional value? But yeah, I feel like there's some good, but I feel like I haven't seen enough to be like, okay, this is going to be the starting five week one.
I mean, I liked what I saw. I don't think that, with the preseason, I look for more negatives than positives, really, because if you're showing a lot of negatives in the preseason, then, I don't feel too good that there's going to be upside when it comes to the regular season, right? There are exceptions, but for the most part, if you can't play in these games against lower competition, against guys who haven't been in the league that long, then it doesn't look great. I like that we saw Cleveland at backup center. I also think that the fact that he didn't play in the second half when he still had Falele in there, it could be some insight into his, where he's going to be with this roster. Now, I will agree. It was interesting to not see him get any snaps at right guard, at least from what I saw. But, I think what we saw was solid. I think we know that Cleveland is a guy. We know what his strengths are. And I think there's a shot that he can be one of those guys that the Ravens, develop, draft in the middle of the draft and develop by year 4. They're doing pretty good. So Voorhees was interesting. I thought that his upper body looked better than his lower body. Footwork was a little bit, suspect at times for sure. But also the guy hasn't played football in over a year, right? And not NFL at all. So I think that given that, there were things to like. And Rosengarten, a lot of people have talked about, how he looked. He showed a lot of good out there as well. So I'll say this. I agree. The fact that this line is young is concerning, but I think that the Ravens have a lot more chips of young guys who can step up and do well than they usually would in this situation. So that does give me some hope that this unit will be able to figure it out at some point before the games really matter in, second half of the season.
I'll close to say I think Rosengarten showed me enough that he'll be the starting right tackle. I like what I saw of him, and it just seems to have ceiling play. Cleveland, my take is that they know what they have in him for right guard, and they don't as much with Falele, so they're giving him some run. I do not think Falele has a command on this position at all. And I'm not convinced that it won't be Cleveland when Linderbaum's back, but I think Cleveland has an absolute roster spot because of his ability to be the backup center, which is an important position to keep on, and also the fact that I think he's going to actually be a starter. So I'm not concerned at all about his roster possibilities. I didn't like Josh Jones. I thought Josh Jones didn't look that good, and not too much of a take on Voorhees. So I'll have to see a little bit more of that. I guess moving along, like I kind of talk about wide receivers, but first I feel like you got to talk about the quarterback play, because the quarterback play not looking good. Now, granted, the preseason is really vanilla, and the pass confidence concepts aren't going to be as good, and they're not passing the main guys. But I didn't see anything to write home about Johnson or Leary. And, Johnson's not going to get any better. He is what he is. Leary can get better, but he has a lot of work to do to get better. So, don't love that. I didn't feel any better about our backup quarterback situation, and my feelings were pretty low, considering the fact that Johnson seemed to clearly had the number 2 position, and I know what that looks like.
Yeah. I won't say it's like immediately call up, Ryan Tannehill on the phone right now, but it's definitely getting close. I think the scary part is, Johnson's a 37-year-old journeyman quarterback who's been on the NFL leading like 14 teams. Like you said, Alec, we know what we have with him. And so, I think he looked okay. I mean, he did make a handful of good throws, I think, in the first half. But his mobility as well, it's obviously very different from Omar, even, not even to the same extent of what Huntley brought to the table. And, I'm not saying that, Huntley was significantly better than Johnson, but like you said, it's like, we know what we have in Johnson. And, if we're having to rely on him for a handful of games midseason, it starts to look a little iffy. And then Leary, yeah, that guy. I mean, I feel like he's headed for the practice squad. He's not really going to see the active roster this year. If the Ravens had to pull in a third quarterback, I feel like they have to sign somebody.
Yeah, it's tough. I think that they're going with exactly what you guys said. They know who Josh Johnson is, and with Leary, they're just looking to see that there's traits they obviously liked when they drafted him, and see if he can develop. If he can't, then you fall back on Johnson, a known commodity. Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, if the Ravens have to rely on Johnson for a few games in the middle of the season, how well are they going to do? That's questionable. Yeah, that is something that you don't want to have to think about right now. I mean, if Lamar goes down for the year, I don't really think it matters who your backup quarterback is. You're not winning the Super Bowl in today's NFL. So, I mean, from that perspective, I don't really think you overpay to go get a Tannehill, a guy who, I mean, he's better than what you got, but I think even a Tannehill isn't going to get you to that next level if Lamar goes down. So, yeah, I mean, it's slightly concerning for the couple games that could happen. Lamar's a guy who, as much as we don't like to talk about, it is hyperbole. People will say, oh, running quarterback, they're going to get injured. We know that that's an oversimplification and mostly not true, but he does get hit a lot, and he's had minor injuries in a lot of seasons, even seasons where he's played a majority, if not all the games. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's what they got. I'll be honest. I don't know who else is out there besides Tannehill. If you want to try and if they do panic and try and bring someone else in, but stay healthy, Lamar.
See if the Browns cut Huntley, bring him back.
They've got so many.
I mean, they do have
someone's going to get cut there.
Quarterbacks.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, me too. Peter, you want to talk about wide receivers?
I can talk about wide receivers. I can. Well, like you said, there's not too much to talk about from a playmaking perspective, right? Because if the quarterbacks aren't getting the ball to wide receivers, that means the wide receivers didn't get a chance to make too many plays. But one guy who did make a play, Tylan Wallace had an excellent grab, probably the best grab of any Raven on the team in that game. Very, was covered, and he had that nice twisting sideline grab to stay in bounds. Which, I mean, we've seen Wallace have big plays in the preseason before, right? So, we'll see what that turns into. Kirkwood looked good out there, but I think at the same time, it's kind of like a, Demarcus Robinson type of thing. Like, he's 30 years old, even though it seems like he's younger. He's 30 years old. He looks like a guy who, he's got a nice big lean build, like, kind of like if you remember, Demetrius Williams back in the day, better wiggle than Williams. Williams is a pretty upright guy, but yeah, I mean, I think again, Kirkwood's a guy we know who he is. So would I like to see more from Walker? They didn't target him a ton. That's going to be something I'm really going to be hoping to see more of as the season goes on. Preseason, I should say, and the regular season, right? We want to know what we have out of this guy. So not much to really, digest here, but I will say that catch from Wallace was great, and hope he gets a chance to show what he can do in the regular season, with some targets.
Yeah, I'd love in the next couple of games too to also target the tight ends a little bit. I feel like we didn't really hear their names a whole lot. Ismail, I know was the one guy that we were like, really, really wanted to see. Didn't really see him targeted at all. And I don't think Likely got many snaps, if any. But Kohler, I know wasn't targeted. I only saw him in blocking occasionally. So yeah, just not a whole lot of passes I think to go around. I think there were some other guys like Wade had a couple targets and everything, but it seemed like one of those situations where like I really don't know at this point who's making the roster, just from what we've seen from the group. So I think practice at this point probably is going to tell the coaches way more than what we've seen on film.
Agreed. I mean, Walker's going to get it because of his draft capital, I imagine. But yeah, 39% of snaps and only one target is not a good look. Sounds like he's having a tough camp too, so he might be more developmental. Another rookie that sounds developmental, I don't know if anyone has anything else to say, is Ali. Didn't look too great, and Owen Wright seems to have that third running back role for as long as Keen's unavailable, and that's kind of consistent with what the camp reports have been saying too. So I don't know if Ali makes the team, frankly. It sounds to me like that could be a practice squad kind of guy, and they've been becoming more and more comfortable cutting some of these guys. that were draft picks and hoping to get on the practice squad and things of that nature. They're not as productive. So I could definitely see Ali getting cut Beatty style.
I mean, you can't put the ball on the ground, right? And we knew coming into the NFL that was something that was kind of a red flag on his draft profile, and then he does it on that kickoff. So, that's not good. And Harbaugh is certainly a coach that isn't going to take that well. But Owen Wright looked really solid. He looked like he knew what he was doing. He was running hard into tackles. He caught that pass. A guy who, if he continues to look like that, very comfortable with him being the third running back and getting snaps in the season, right? So that was really cool to see, I think, and I don't think I'm alone in that take. Looks like the Ravens might have found another diamond in the rough there, and a guy who can really help out this offense while we're waiting for Keaton to come back.
I guess let's talk special teams. What did you guys think of the kickoff? I thought it was fine. It was exactly what I thought it'd be.
I'm intrigued by it. I wasn't sure what I was going to think about it, but I realized that I really don't care about the opening kickoff formation that much. I didn't miss it. I was just like, all right, this is just a different thing we're going to do, and I could see my one question for it is just, how likely is it that there's going to be a big play out of it? I mean, there were some chances where it seemed a couple guys may have had an opening for a little bit, but that was swallowed up pretty quickly. And I think that's, it's going to be an experimental year for the league, right? And, we'll see. I'm intrigued by it. I'm intrigued by the rule. I don't hate it. And, the game evolves, whether it's by, explicit rule changes or, player physicality and better nutrition for these guys or, new styles. It's just when it's a rule change like this, it's so explicit and in your face. I think that can sometimes, stick out more and cause more controversy. But I'm not going to say that I'm completely won over for it, but I'm certainly open to seeing where it goes.
Oh man, Mountcastle could have had like a double there.
Instead
it's an out. Yeah. Anyway, the kickoff. It's weird. And
it is weird.
Just different weird. But I mean, I could tell you, like, I feel like there are definitely some big plays waiting to happen. I don't know, just from watching a little bit of the replay, a couple minutes before the pod. I feel like the Ravens had much more success than the Eagles did. In the Ravens case, when they were, defending the kick, they were tackling fairly quickly. I think there was only one kickoff that I can remember. I think Stout ended up making that play. Maybe that was a punt return. But yeah, on the Ravens side, I think Ali, even when he fumbled that ball, I think he had a pretty good return before that. And Pepe Williams also, I feel like, had a couple of good returns. So that were pretty close to breaking, but just shoestring tackle, being able to get him down. So I mean, we'll definitely see. I feel like the potential is there, and certainly I feel like over the last couple of years, like short of like a handful of really, really good returners, is really hard to make the plays happen, and it's kind of like a broken play. If you get a chance of more big returns of this, like, I'm for that. Like, that's exciting.
That's really, I think, the only take. I completely agree with you, Chris. Like, it doesn't have to be a better play than the old kickoff as long as like actual returning is happening. Right? Like back when the returns used to happen for the kickoff, it wasn't like there was always a big break. It's just like, okay, there's actual action here, and it's also safer, which was like the other point. So like, they're doing the thing. That's what it's supposed to be. And if there are more like dynamic plays out of it, if it's actually dynamic, like that's so cool. Like I like that. That's fun. But that's like honestly priority number 3 probably. I think they're much more interested in the fact that it's a play again and it actually matters. But speaking of special teams, one of the standouts on special teams and defense was Sanusi Kane. The guy balled out, and I was a little surprised given the fact that people were kind of quiet on him in his draft pedigree. I thought he played quite well, and I think he's going to find a role in the team for sure as a special teams and maybe a dime back guy. Like, he looked like he had some chops.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for him is just going to be the number of safeties that we have on here, right? I think with the signing of Jackson, I think it makes it a little bit more difficult. Worley also, got some snaps in this game as well, and I feel like with him having the experience of not starting but contributing to the team over the last year or so, I feel like I saw enough from him that he would probably still have a role in this team. But yeah, to Kane, yeah, I mean, kind of talking about him when we drafted, we didn't really have too much expectations. I know, Alec, you were a little disappointed just given kind of the the position that he brings, not really the need that we were looking for. Because we were looking for a guy to be able to play more deep safety, to have Hamilton kind of stay in the box and do what he does best. Kane is not really that guy. He's more of the, I guess, more of a traditional dime back, strong safety type. So, but yeah, I mean, he impressed. Yeah, a couple of really solid tackles in the open field, both on special teams and defense. So yeah, it was something where, not a lot of standouts, at least on sometimes sides of the ball, but Kane, I feel like made his presence known with the plays he had.
I mean, you could never have too many good players in the secondary, right? I mean, maybe there's not a clear path for him now. Maybe he's a practice squad guy this year, but I'm interested to see what he does the rest of this preseason, right? Because, I mean, you never know. You never know what could happen with injuries. Kyle Hamilton is an absolutely incredible player, but it feels like every 3 weeks there's some report of him getting, something slightly tweaked in practice. In a game, he's out for a couple snaps and then comes back in. I think that I loved what I saw. I love what I saw, and I want to see more. And if it means we got more guys, and it's hard to figure out where he plays, it means we got more guys, and it's hard to figure out where he plays. Maybe 2-3 years down the road, it's more obvious where he fits in this rotation, right?
Sure. And a guy, we talked about Voorhees before and how he's been learning during his IR year, so to speak. Simpson didn't get to play much in his rookie season, but he came out looking very impressive. He got the green dot, which is a nice practice for him in case of an injury to Roquan. Simpson looked like the real deal. I understand the confidence in moving on from Queen. I understand why they invested a high draft pick in him last year, just saying he looked like the best player available on their board, and they felt confident. I mean, if he is as good as everyone's piping him up to be, and how much he showed in the preseason, I think we got a real steal in our hands. Even though he didn't really produce much anything last year, that was basically because we had impeccable health and there was no point, right? I'm super stoked about this player, and I want to see more.
Yeah, and I feel like it was easy to overlook unless you were looking closely, because obviously there weren't a whole lot of interceptions or fumble recoveries or anything flashy like that, but yeah, Simpson, a lot of stuff I liked. I feel like the biggest thing, I mean, I feel like there are a lot of big things that stand out, but one of the biggest things I think that stands out from looking at him versus Patrick Queen. I don't mean early Patrick Queen, right? Not Patrick Queen that left last year, but early year 1, year 2 Patrick Queen. The ability to shed blocks, I feel like, is really, really good. It's just not getting caught up in traffic, not getting having a lineman kind of push him around. He's able to shed those really quick and make a tackle on the running back. And I feel like that was pretty consistent. There were only a few plays that I could see that he was maybe in a bad position or not being able to make the tackle. For the most part, he was shedding guys and being where he was supposed to be. So I think that was a really positive thing. And pass coverage too. I feel like I saw him getting in passing lanes and getting deep and disrupting. And one of them, I know he was definitely in coverage, and Pickett was looking his way, and that was a coverage check. So yeah, just a lot of really good things. I feel like as long as he's able to recognize plays, particularly in the regular season, I think preseason offenses are going to be a little bit more vanilla. So, you got to temper expectations a little bit, but still, if his play awareness, play recognition is, trending in a good direction, then I feel like there's probably going to be a lot of benefit that we're going to get from him immediately. And yeah, it's super exciting. I mean, putting him next to Rowe, I feel like it's going to be really good. It's going to be like Queen never left.
Yeah, I mean, he was all over the field. He looked confident out there, which was great. I don't know if he's the same playmaker that Queen was. I mean, even in the years when there was a lot of talk about, was Queen worth that high draft capital? that type of stuff. He was still a guy who was capable of making that big play on the defense, you know, interception or that highlight sack. And I don't know if I quite see that yet with Simpson, but also does that matter, right? You know, it was great when Queen was able to do those plays, but you've got so many guys on this defense who are those elite playmakers that, you know, if Simpson doesn't develop into that's fine. But yeah, he looked incredibly confident in this game. He didn't look like he was hesitating. He looked like he knew where he needed to go, where the ball was going to go. Yeah, I agree. He looks like he's ready to start week 1. So that was really good to see. You know, I think another guy we have to talk about on this defense, I'm actually a little bit surprised we didn't lead with him when we're talking about the defense. Nate Wiggins, thankfully, avoided a very serious injury in this game. We still have to see how long he'll be out. But, you know, when he was on the field, I think you saw a lot of flashes of why the Ravens took him in the first round. He was physical. He had some pass deflections. The Eagles targeted him a lot at the beginning. Now, he was unfortunate to be late on that read to the flat with the running back. Could he have caught the guy? I don't know. That's tough to say. But overall, a lot of promising things to like from Nate Wiggins' first action in a Ravens uniform.
Yeah, he looked good. He looked like he was supposed to. And that's the biggest thing. Like, I hate to say it, but for a first round corner, given the fact that they didn't come out guns ablazing with their top guys, I'd hope he looked darn good, and he did. So that's good, given the circumstances. Obviously, I agree with you with the thing in the flat. I think in general, it sounds to me that when he's in man-to-man coverage, he'll probably be okay because his makeup speed's still elite, and that's what he's known for. Everything else might be a little bit more projection. But the cool thing is that these guys are kind of rare to find in college nowadays. Like true man corners are kind of hard to find. And a lot of guys are playing in zone coverages most of the time. And frankly, he probably will do a lot of zone with the Ravens as well. So it's important that he gets better at this. But he's a more rare guy to find, I feel like, in college these days. And he looked the part, and that's super duper exciting. I mean, he's so small on the field. I'm just hoping that that sports car can stay out of the shop as much as possible and be a contributor, because it definitely looks like he has a lot to give.
Yeah, well, at least he's not. We don't have like an Emmanuel Forbes situation on our hands. Yeah. Like he's a little bit larger than that, but
right.
But yeah, I mean,
he was physical.
Yeah,
no, yeah, I mean,
he hasn't cared that he's like 180 soaking wet.
right, yeah. No, we definitely don't want to like Pepe Williams situation. And I say that not even like he actually played well. I'd like to talk about him, but for the couple of years past, like, it has been hard for him to stay on the field, due to size. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I agree. Like Wiggins looked good. We just have to see if he's able to get back for week 1, given the shoulder injury. But yeah, otherwise I feel like positive signs. And between him and getting, Marlon and Stevens and everything, like, Millette hopefully will come back healthy at some point as well. Like, I think it's a good group. It certainly looks, it looks better right now, I think, than maybe we did at this point in preseason last year, when we were like, Stevens, we don't know if he's going to play corner at that point, and we didn't really have anybody else. So
Rocky Sin was the guy, and then Darby came at the last minute, right? Like, it's crazy how different it is.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, no, sort of the last guy I want to talk about, Pepe Williams. I think he had a good game as well. I think we talked about him a little bit earlier, just in terms of special teams. He got a couple of plays on punt returns, but yeah, in terms of the nickel spot, like, I feel like he did pretty well. I think he was fairly good in coverage, made a couple nice tackles. He had a nice sack when Orr called an overload blitz to the left side. He was able to get a sack on Pickett. So, yeah, I mean, I know Millette's kind of dealing with an injury right now, and I don't know if we've got a timetable for him, but I feel like Pepe, knock on wood, as long as he stays healthy, like, I feel like he could probably be in a position to get some snaps at that spot. I don't think he's going to start him on Millette, but, at that point, 20%, something like that. Like, I think that could be on the cards for him.
I think the last place to talk about with the defense, looking at defensive line, I think Tavius Robinson came in and looks like he's picking up right where he left off. I think he had a really good game out there. Josh Chipo, I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, He played a lot in the second half and looked pretty strong there. Saw some snaps for Urban, some snaps for Travis Jones, Broderick Washington. Looks solid. I don't know if there's really any standout there from the defensive line in this game, but also, I think you look at this and it was a very solid effort from this group. Nothing really that stuck out in my mind as, this guy's not making the team, but I think that Tavius Robinson, I think, was the one that I was most pleased to see. This year was a guy who outperformed expectations in his rookie year, and we've seen guys do that. Have a bigger rookie season than expected for the Ravens, and then their second year just kind of fall off and go back to what we all thought they would be. But he looked strong out there. He looked good. Looked like he's ready for a big sophomore campaign.
Totally agree about Tavius Robinson. He looked like the body transformation things that I heard about from camp reports did seem the part. He did look a little bit better built this year, which is great. I think he's taking the right steps towards being an even bigger contributor this year. And I think a guy like Tupou is going to have to fight to get on the practice squad, but we can now allow vets on there, so that's good. And that'll be that unless there's an injury. So hopefully we have a stable of guys who look capable, because last year's health was impeccable, and that's hard to repeat. Like, it's unlikely that'll be the case again this year. So we'll definitely want to have a guy like that. So I agree. Chris, anyone else you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so. I think it covers everybody I want to talk about. Yeah.
What about you, Peter?
No, I think we're good. Like we said, not too much we can learn from this game, because just all the backups, and I think a lot of just looking at sets and just seeing very vanilla stuff that the guys are doing. But certainly some big players who stood out, and I think we really hit them all.
Well, I guess we'll wrap with this. I'll just kind of point out the things I'm hearing, and feel free to add in anything. It sounds like the things we're looking for next game are more wide receiver and tight end play. Like, no one really emerged. Will someone emerge? I wanted to see more of Kadir Ismail, and I felt like he didn't get too much opportunity. So maybe we'll see more from him. Obviously, more offensive line play is going to be good for us, because that's still a work in progress. And I guess to me, the secondary guys, Pepe, hopefully TJ Tampa gets some opportunity now that he's ramping up. At least Isaac is also ramping up. So we get to see those guys for the first time, which will be really exciting. And yeah, just like kind of, I think, keep evaluating back of the roster defensive players, because that's where a lot more of the fun will be, in my opinion, because wide receiver, I think, is pretty darn set. Offensive line, I think, is relatively set. I think it seems like they're probably going to keep the guys you expect them to keep. I don't know. We'll see. Like, I don't think it's going to be too many surprises on that side of the ball. So, yeah, that's it for me. Anything else that you wanted to add?
I think for me, just continuing to see if these guys who had these big games continue to build on it. Simpson, like we said, is he going to continue to have dominant play? Owen Wright, is he going to continue to look like a guy who's ready for carries in the regular season? Is Tylan Wallace going to continue to make big plays? Are we going to see Rosengarten continue to look like a guy who can step in and be the starter in week one? So that's what I want to see, because I think that while this roster does have a lot of things that are set, like you said, those few positions there where we're relying on young guys, those are going to be important. Those are the positions that can make or break a season. So just continuing to see those guys who are going to be guys we're going to need a lot of snaps from, but maybe don't have the experience that some of these other guys have. Just continuing to see them grow and continuing to see them be ready for week one.
I feel like for me, just hopefully a win. I feel like the Eagles roster is fairly good. Falcons, I think is weaker. Right. I think they're kind of going through a little bit of rebuild, but obviously we'll see a little bit, but certainly I want to get I'd like to go back to a way where the Ravens depth is showing off and better than the competition. So a win coming out of that would be pretty nice. But I mean, I agree on all the stuff that you brought up. Of course, we're going to be evaluating back roster players.
It might be tough though because they're going to play a lot of Penix, I imagine, and like he's actually, better and has something to actually show. Like, yeah, this is like the only election time he's going to get. Really, I don't know. I guess you can say that about a lot of these backup players too, but he at least has like the talent maybe behind it. So,
and he's still a rookie too, though.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I guess we'll see. We'll see what they have over there, and we'll see what we have too. So that game is Saturday at 1:00, or no, at noon rather, and we'll talk about it when the time comes. Otherwise, you can find us on Twitter at OneWinningPod, threads at OneWinningPod, email us onewinningpod@gmail.com. And otherwise, have a great rest of your week, and go Ravens.